Let me just check if this is working. Sorry. Okay. Yes, we're live. I apologize. Usually there should be an animated intro by the VII Foundation, but this time it didn't happen. But yeah, I would like to welcome everyone at another series of continuing education at the VII Community in partnership with Photowings. We're very happy to have today the team behind the USA 3.0 project with us. The project was really done with our contributing photographers from the VII Foundation and with our colleagues at VII Community, because we know that in the US we have quite a large community of our alumni, over 100 of them. So we're very kind of happy that this really kind of ended a collaborative project from so many of you. Why we also decided to do this during our continuing education series, where we usually have kind of a lecture format, we said that it's a very relevant project because all of the photographers really deal mainly with their communities. Danny just mentioned before, they are documenting kind of their backyard. They are doing the stories that are relevant to them, that come from kind of their experience and that show their view on the current state of the USA. So I thought it's a very relevant project to discuss with our community. And it's also interesting because it has a special kind of educational dimension to it. Danny was working in the University of Iowa, where he, with students, really produced a book about the USA 3.0, as well as the exhibition that was just shown at Photoville. So for us, it's also interesting to learn a little bit more about how to kind of educate younger generations, how to teach them about how to curate, how to edit something, how to really approach this kind of project as a whole project and see what is the potential of this kind of project. So yeah, just a short introduction about this, but I'm very happy to welcome our contributing photographers, Danny Wilcox Frazier and Adriana Zehbrauskas, as well as our former mentee from the VII Mentor Program, Brooklyn Kascel, in this session. I will really let them tell you more about their specific projects for the USA 3.0 as we continue this session. But I also want to encourage all of you here in the audience to really post your questions in the comments. And I'll also share a link with you on where the book is available for purchase. You can also buy it together with print. And also I'll direct you to the website of the VII Foundation, where we have written a little bit more about the US 3.0. So this is really something short from me. So Danny, I'll pass now the word to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Nika, and thanks everyone for attending the presentation. And it's still rather hot off the presses. Thanks to Zia at the foundation site in Bosnia and Sarajevo. I actually have the book. It's large format, take it out of its protective cover. The reproduction that Zia oversaw, absolutely beautiful. As Nika was saying, the production, the photo editing, design, everything within the book was done in a workshop format with students from the University of Iowa and Daily Iowan, the independent student newspaper at the university. But we basically barely got it to Photoville, where we had a book launch a little over a week ago. The work is exhibited. Both Brooklyn and Adriana were at the festival. It was wonderful. And most importantly, we were able to engage about the work and the process, the educational side of the process. I think what's really within the VII ecosystem, what is most interesting about this project is there are no lines. Absolutely. That was, and the photographers who participated, I think, fully understand that there are no lines between, community and member or contributor is the proper term for us at the foundation. It was about the stories. It was about the work. And, I found it so rewarding to interact, especially with some photographers, that I hadn't worked with. A number of the photographers were former mentees, and Brooklyn has worked with me for a very long time, first as a student, but so I followed a number of her projects. But getting to work with new photographers, individuals, getting to know their work, and the reasons for the issues that they cover, is just was incredible. And I love that part of it. And, that's how we all grow. I mean, in editing, it's a project like this, there's so much that I then learn about, my own country, the United States, through all these photographers. And that's the goal of what we do. For those who don't, know a lot about my work specifically, I cover rural issues. I'm from rural Iowa. I've always concentrated on looking at the plight of rural peoples. And I think what you'll see with Adriana and Brooklyn is they're very connected to their communities, as Nico was saying, their personal experiences. And throughout the book, I'm going to start sharing, we're going to be able to see, all right, Nika, I'm going to get this on full screen. We're also going to keep an eye on me with time, as Brooklyn knows I can run on too long, but I want to make sure. Are we good? Full screen, everyone?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to run through the book really quick. When this photograph came in it's part, and Adriana will speak about it, but it's part of a beautiful story that she worked on. And but I saw this image, and I immediately connected to it, as did all of the students in the room. And it's just one of those moments where you just know something is the cover. Brooklyn also has a photograph that, the first time I saw it, it was work, even though I had mentored her as part of the Like a Women Photograph VII mentorship program. She won a position in that prestigious programming. She sent in a new photograph of a portrait that just stopped me in my tracks, and everyone in the room as we projected that. But this was a photograph that I just instantly knew that it was the cover. As we go, you can see there's absolutely no separation. These are the 20 photographers. And yes, 20 photographers is a lot. That's something I'll talk about in a second. But it's an incredible list of photographers who participated in this. We sent out notices through the community members here in the United States, and we just want everyone to know that initiatives like this are open for all to participate in. And sometimes you need to reach out to Nika and get in contact with whoever's leading a project, and be able to speak about and sell, if you will, your work. But what we're hoping with this project is to make sure that we're amplifying work that is being done by community members as well as our contributing photographers. Some people work for legacy media and get exposure that way. Their work is, of course, assigned or pitched to, and it goes out into the world and has great impact that way. But you must, I think it's so important, and this comes from, my very first long-term project. It's very important to find other places, other ways to amplify that voice, to get your work out in front of in front of the public, to have an impact. And that is how you should look at this. After completing my first body of work called Driftless, which was a book published back in 2008, I then partnered with Media Storm, Brian Storm, and I produced a just over 30-minute documentary about my subjects, where they in their own voice told their stories. And I just realized the number of people that we then reached, into the millions, with publishing that on the Media Storm's website. Was it again amplified it. It got that work out there even further. So that's what this is about. It's about us having impact, us all coming together, working collectively to make sure that the stories of, in this case, the United States, and I would love to see this model happen with community throughout the world. But it's a chance for us to find ways to get other people involved with the stories we care so deeply about. Peter Moss wrote the introduction to, which I think is quite extraordinary. I'll read really quickly just a little bit from the first graph. I'm going to take a drink of water. What is the United States? No matter when you ask that question, the year, decade, or century, the response will involve contradictions. The country is too vast and varied to pinpoint with either a comfortable generalization or an uncomfortable one. But there is a unique feel to the historic moment we find ourselves in, because the contradictions we have known and lived with for generations are seeping into the foundations of what we thought this country was or might be, undermining it. So I apologize. It's the type to be able to show it full screen is quite small in my glasses. New prescription, but still quite hard for me to see. This photo by Jordan Gale, taken at the Democratic National Convention. And the reason why I highlight that right now, Jordan is the one who came up with the idea to do some kind of publication. And Ron, myself, were talking while covering the DNC, and he came up with the idea of doing something around either just the convention or the election, and the election is central to this body of work. How I conceive the sequencing, so the visual narrative was, I was going to use political photos, different moments within the campaign here in the United States, as a string that tied all of the main issues that were driving politics in this last election cycle. So throughout, the politics come back in, but the book is primarily these themes, these issues that were driving voters and politicians. So yes, this is Jordan sparked, Ron expanded. I then jumped on board and fully developed how Ron and I'd work in directing this and get student collaboration and institutional collaboration, and we have a book. The U.S.-Mexico border, Adriana can speak more directly. Her photos are absolutely stunning. They came in, and And again, it was one of those situations where I was just, knew I was looking at a historic work, as is this photograph by Ron Haviv, co-director on this and founder of VII and the VII Foundation. These are, these are photographs by Adriana of crossings as time is running out. And the great thing, we worked with a close friend of mine, Jennifer Wagner, and the text portion of this is absolutely as critical, the historic and these news moments, like the photograph on the left here. While difficult to look at, this is an individual who drowned while trying to cross into the United States. The body being recovered by first responders. On the right, Christopher Lee photograph of a site where a customs border agent was killed during a shift while working at the U.S.-Mexico border. It's just looking at the individuals themselves. And then this photo by Ash came in, and it again, one of those that just stopped us. So obviously this was an issue that was very central, but then, working to find Nicole Sebecki had a photograph along Route 66 of a mural that points to one of the locations where there was a mass burial site for victims of the race massacre in Tulsa. We continued to report. I continued to report, and they had actually, the city of Tulsa had announced that they had identified the first victim of that from the mass grave. And that individual was a World War I U.S. Army veteran. His name, C.L. Daniel. And even following to more recent news reports, Tulsa is going to be paying reparations to the descendants of the massacre, the race massacre in Tulsa. Jordan Gale's work on the right here, this is a body of work that looked at the legalization. So Measure 110 decriminalized all drugs, and then also had a lot of programs that were to help those who were addicted, and help people get off the streets, so housing, etc. And anyway, as the plan rolled out, there wasn't enough done quickly enough, and with the fentanyl crisis, Jordan started to see a huge amount of overdoses, police officers who were acting more as paramedics than law enforcement, administering Narcan. And this story ran in the New York Times. Nolan Trow's amazing work about accessibility and in housing for less abled individuals. Absolutely stunning essay that Jennifer worked with. Then again, back to the Frozen Caucuses, back to politics. So the Frozen Caucuses is an essay that I did for Politico magazine. There were horrific storms during the with wind chill, 20, 30 below temperatures, accidents. The state got closed down due to blizzards. As we were coming up to the first vote for the Republican Party, the Iowa caucuses. So I'm going to start moving quicker because, I want everyone to see this. Student protests, pro-Palestinian protests on the campus of Columbia and NYU, Ashley Gilbertson and Christopher Lee, politics coming in You know, Christopher Lee's photo by me at the DNC of then Vice President Kamala Harris, Ron Haviv covering protests in New York City. And Christopher Lee's then, you know, really touching photographs, very personal, of recent immigrants. You know, I wanted to make sure that you know, we're covering the headlines, but we're also connecting. That is what is, I think, most important in this publication, is the photographers all so deeply connected with these issues, and the individuals they're photographing and reporting on. Nicole Sabecchia did work on the closing of the last the closing of the abortion clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma. These are letters that Nicole had photographed that had been sent into the Tulsa Women's Clinic. Quite extraordinary work. There was another body of work by Sarah Terry that'll be coming up that is a lot of has handwriting on photographs, and I wanted to present it with a scrapbook feel. So then when this work came in from Nicole, you know, I was like, okay, this is going to work. Not that I wanted to have them right next to each other, but it was a common visual theme. You know, protests, both, you know, Ron Haviv here, anti-abortion activists reacting to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on June 24th, which overturned Roe v. Wade, returning the decision back to states. And then the protests on the right, Doug Barrett, community member who covered the protests in both Manhattan and Kansas City, Kansas. Brooklyn will speak about her work, but this is the absolutely stunning photo of Avery Taylor that I can tell you that I often, when I've edited before I screen, I often watch the reaction, and the reaction to this was just, it was unbelievable. It was on people's faces and bodies, and just, you know, the sounds that people made, just that, you know, it's just there's so much connection I found in this photograph. Ed Kashi and his wife, Julie, traveled across the country looking at, and there's a quote here. This is Joachim's from, he was in Las Vegas running up to the election. But there's a quote here by Ed: even though there were rumblings of civil war and we are so divided, that isn't what we felt on the ground. On the right here, you know, this is a piece on AI, autonomous trucking. It's going to put hundreds of thousands of truckers out of business in the decades to come. James Year, community member. So I'm just going to move. This is work that I've been photographing at the Newman Ranch since 2008. My good friend John Newman took his life in 2019, and I have been continuing to photograph. He had a young son at the time, newborn, and I'm photographing as Stetson grows, and you know, eventually will take over the ranch. So this is a branding, but the work is really about access to healthcare, lack of access to healthcare in rural communities. So you can see we're covering politics coming back in, you know, here looking at petroleum and you know, global warming, et cetera, the LA fires, you know, John Cherry, two community members here, you know, Joseph Silva on the left covering the LA fires. I mean, this is just months ago, you know, and this is in a bound, you know, oversized book. So John Cherry covering the flooding in Appalachia. Unfortunately, we're seeing deadly floods that just happened, and you know, John is covering that again. Community members. Ilvi, her work looking at, safe havens, so climate safe havens. It's a kind of controversial term in some, with some scientists, but, looking at that idea of people moving to places that are less impacted by climate change, and then who has the funds, the money to stay there. So, hey, we got Maggie, who did an incredible piece showing, the impact of inflation, taking photos of the price of food, which is, globally, but here in the United States has been such a hot topic, and very, hard for people to deal with. Ashley Gilbertson, looking at drug addiction and just the impact of that. Sarah, we had the conventions, of course. This is the work by Sarah Terry I was speaking about, union protests in LA, also taking a historic look back at protests and bringing, that historical protest together with present day, and then handwritten notes, just beautiful work. Doug Barrett, working, a community member who's looking at the difficulty that Black farmers and Black horsemen have in Kansas, his home state, in accessing needed financial support, et cetera. So, just absolutely stunning work. Portrait on the left, DNC on the right. Adriana will speak about Rainey's story. And you can see, as we're coming out of the book, the elections are getting close and everything's ramping up. And then this is shortly after Donald Trump was sworn in for his second term, and Ron Haviv was on the streets of DC, and the Proud Boys were marching down the streets. This is a photograph when I've shown, it's just the reaction on people's faces, their bodies is so visible and felt. Jordan Gale, inauguration, and then Christopher Lee is the last photograph in the book. So, again, these are the partners on the book. You have this beautiful photograph by Adriana, on the inside of the back cover. And then that's how we end it. And the reason why we have USA 3.0 struck is, as in Peter Moss's and how we describe the project, this is this democracy and country are ever changing, hopefully for the better. And we plan to continue the documenting all that is going on, and we'll be having US 4.0. So that's a real quick, wow, I did keep it to 30 minutes. What I'll just say quickly, I would love for you, for everyone to know that we will be moving forward with USA 4.0. Those working in the United States, or those visiting for work in the United States, we want your participation. We want to work, again, to amplify your voice, to amplify your stories. And, this is, we hope that you all and the community will send out all the templates and everything, help promote the book, the sale of the book. There will be a link to multiple websites, but for now, I will bring up the all right. So for now, can everyone see this?
Yes, they can, and I also shared it in the comments already, so they can. Yeah.
Look at Adriana is just on top of technology so much better. Brooklyn knows sometimes I'm like a little slow moving on it. Love it, use it well, but so thank you for that. We actually, the three of us on this call are also helping raise the funds to pay for the printing, and this is just an exercise of getting the work out. We collectively want to make sure that we pay all the bills on it, of course, but it really is about just again amplifying voices, and but if you are interested, Adriana and Brooklyn, myself, Jordan, and Ron have agreed to have 8x10 photographs sold for $100. So these are the photographs, so they can be purchased, and you get to make the book for free. So I'm saying this to advertise to people, of course, if anyone wanted it themselves, but just wanted to show everyone this real quick. And yeah, I want to turn it over. Again, thank you for being on the call. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for all who participated. I am going to turn it over to Adriana, and if we'll take some questions at the end, but I am so sorry I went over by a few minutes, but I think we started a couple late. So
Yeah, we did, and then I'll also actually ask you after the presentations of Adriana and Brooklyn to also tell us a little bit more about this collaboration at the university, but this is for later. Let's now focus on the story of Adriana. Adriana, just a technical note that you'll have to screen share again because it didn't stay
Yeah.
kind of
Let
connected.
me
Yeah.
do this. Share screen window. All right. Can you see my screen? Yep.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Oh, hi. Thank you, Anika. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Danny, Nika, Gianna, everybody that put this together. It's really an honor to be here and part of this project. So I'll introduce myself a little bit for those who don't know me. So I am a Brazilian photojournalist. I'm now based in Phoenix, Arizona, after spending 12 years in Mexico, where I was covering Mexico, Central America, Latin America mostly. The work that I have in the book are three bodies of work. One is about migration. The other one is about the campaign trail. I photographed the RNC, and then the campaigns here in Phoenix, Kamala's and Trump's. And the other story I have is a story about Rainy, a story about this family of Native Americans living here in Gila Community Reservation. So these three stories are actually super important to me because one, migration is the story that it's a little bit the story of my own life. I'm being from Brazil, moved to Mexico, and then moving to the US. I kind of went through all the pains and difficulties of, reinventing myself in a different country, trying to find community, trying to find work, trying to find myself. And it is something that speaks really, really deeply to me. In Mexico, I covered a lot of migration stories, also the consequences of violence in Central America, which is the photo that you guys are seeing here. So during my time in Mexico, I I really went deep into not just the causes, not just the migration itself, the movement of people moving, but why people move. So the story of migration is really the story of the planet, right? It's this planet is formed by movements of people. And in the United States and Mexico, it's not different, but it's been changing. And what changed it is from the 1980s until the beginning of the 2000s. Mostly what happened here was mostly the migrants were Mexican men trying to cross to work in the United States. From 2014 on, it changed. And we started seeing lots of people coming in from what we call the Northern Triangle, which is Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. And it was not just men, it was entire families. And this was due to a lot of factors, famine, persecution, natural disasters, climate change, corrupt regimes, economic collapses. And this has, been happening now, and it really now became a mass migration that is not only the people from the Northern Triangle, but from really all over the world. So these photos that you're seeing, I'm just going to go back here because it's a story. This is a gang in Honduras. We are into the headquarters of this gang, and they were terrorizing whole neighborhoods, and they force young people to be part of the gang. And if you're a boy and if you do not get into the gang, they will come and terrorize your family. They will rape your sisters. So it's not really that people have a chance. This is a story of also Honduras, and these are 3 schoolgirls that were victims of sex traffic. And so they're in their school uniforms because they were in school. And it's, for me, really important to understand why people move and really go into their stories. And this is a story. This is a family that was trying to cross the Mexico to find the mother. The mother was already in the U.S. and they were kidnapped in Mexico. They were taken hostage for a month. The mother had to send money from the U.S. So all the money that they were trying to, that they were going to spend crossing, they had to pay a gang. At least, they were not killed, but they went all back to Honduras. This is a father who was going to cross, and this was when Trump started separating families at the border, and he was a widow. He couldn't find any jobs. This is his daughter. They had everything ready. They were about to leave and go to the border. They had paid a lot of money to a coyote. It's a lot of money for them. It's a lot of money for everyone. I think in those days, this was about they had to pay like $7,000 to cross. It was money that family put together with a lot of hard work. And then the night before he had to leave, he had a change of heart. He was afraid that he would be separated from his daughter. He was afraid of what could happen to her, and they did not go. And, that put him in a really difficult situation with the sister that had paid the money, and now he had to pay her back. But it's never a really an easy decision for anyone that's planning such a difficult trip like this. After that, this was during the big mass caravan. That was in 2018. I covered this for 2 weeks for the New Yorker. And this is one of the photos that really spoke to me, because it was, people were walking by hand. They were taking rides. These were people who were in the back of a cattle truck. And for me, it really represents the whole movement of, being really trapped. although, you're trying to move forward, but you're still trapped. And this is one of the photos that are in the book. This is in 2023 when Title 19 was going to be lifted. This is before that, 6 months before that, in El Paso, when people were coming in and turning themselves into Border Patrol and then released into the country. And this is a father. He was there with the whole family, and then they arrive, and at this point, people were extremely exhausted and tired and happy, and also very worried about the next steps. And they were just, the interesting thing is that they were just released in US soil, and they didn't know what to do or where to go. And it was cold, very cold. So this is when we went to photograph the lift of the title. It was supposed to happen, I think, at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I might be getting the times wrong now, but so we had to be. This was photographed on an assignment for the New York Times, and we had to be at the border at the exact moment where they were going to lift the title. That meant, which was that title that the Trump administration put in place during the pandemic, saying that people who would cross would be immediately deported back to where they came from, like across the border. So this was their last chance to come in and not be deported back. So this was we were there for a couple of days before that, photographing the movement, people crossing. There was a lot of people, thousands of people coming in every day, and this was the exact moment when the title was going to be lifted. So as you can see, these are migrants that come from all over the world. There were people coming in from a lot of African countries, from Europe, from Eastern Europe, from Central America. And this is a more recent photograph. This is after this was photographed in March in a asylum, in a shelter in Tijuana on the border with Mexico. So these are people who were about to cross into the U.S. when Donald Trump canceled all the programs. Like there was a program that the Biden administration put into place. It's called BP1, where people have this app on their phones, and you could schedule a meeting, a hearing, and then you wait in Mexico on the border, and then when your time would come, and then you would cross to turn yourself in and start the process legally. So when Trump came into power, he immediately canceled all that. So these are people who are waiting to have their meeting in a shelter in Tijuana. This is a child, a girl from a Venezuelan family. They waited for 3 months in Mexico City for their appointment. When their appointment was coming close, they traveled to Tijuana, and their appointment was exactly on the same day that Donald Trump went into power and canceled their appointment. So they lost all the money that they had worked, save for the trip, and they were in this limbo, literally, in Tijuana, without knowing what to do next. This is the same shelter in Tijuana. Kids were trying to spend, their time. They're playing ball, and meanwhile, security. There's a lot of pressure now from the U.S. government into Mexico, so there's a lot of patrolling around the streets of Tijuana, near the border wall. This is a neighborhood that's adjacent to the border wall. Like this one, like here, I'm standing next, really, literally next to the border wall in Tijuana. And this is back when 2023, when people crossed, and there was centers for them to kind of find their next steps, so people would help them to buy bus tickets to where they had to go, charge their cell phones, get in touch with their families, and start their life in the US on this side. And this is an operation here in Arizona in Cochise County, where this car was spotted and stopped by Border Patrol. And inside them, it was 3 young women from Guatemala. They were all dressed, and they were crossing illegally through land. And they were stopped at Border Patrol. And this is when, Border Patrol asked them out of the car. And they had to take off their camouflage clothes they had like on top of their ordinary clothes. And after that, they were taken into custody. And this is a very recent story I also shot for the New York Times. And this is the militarization of the border here in Arizona. This is the U.S. military now patrolling the border. So we went to Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. Sorry. This is inside of a Black Hawk helicopter. One of the captains of the operation. Another Black Hawk helicopter. We were flying over the border wall. And this is, some Strivex vehicles on the border at a Army Fort base in Texas. And inside the base, and this is the border with New Mexico. So you can see the border wall up there. So, and then this is, the cover of the book. I'm super, super honored to have this photograph there. This is part of Rainey's story. So this is the cemetery. So when we were photographing Rainey's story, the cemetery was part of her story, because that's where her adoptive father was buried. And he was one of the most important persons in her life. And the story of Rainey is a story that, she had suffered an incredible trauma. She's a 7-year-old girl who saw, terrible abuse in her family. And she was adopted by her uncle, who is this person that passed away and is buried in the cemetery. So I went there because I wanted to see where he was buried, and this image really spoke to me. And then I had no idea this was going to become the cover of a book. Also because that was before the elections, and again, this is all about having seeing your photographs, having a second life or third life. And it's it's quite amazing. You never know. The story of Rainey is, I spent a couple of days with her at home. We were very concerned about showing her identity. We talked about it a lot. In the end, so when I was working on this story, I try to photograph her in many different ways, and ways that would show her face and ways that would not show her face, so we could run a story without identifying her. And this is one of the moments, when she was out of the shower, and her adoptive mother was brushing her hair. For me, what was important was really to try to understand what was going on with Rainey. What happened to her is she had this trauma, and she was seeing a mental health professional that was paid for the Indian health system, and that was canceled after there was a huge fraud here in Arizona. So that meant that Rainey could not go to her therapy anymore. And, for a 7-year-old girl being 6 months without therapy, she regressed all the progress that she had done. So she would, have this changes of heart. She would be really happy one moment, and then, in the next minute, something would trigger her, and she would fall into this deep depression and crying, and we got to witness that. And for me, the most important thing was to show that, and in a way that would keep her dignity and her family's dignity, although at the same time being strong enough to elicit a response, because I feel that what we do as photojournalists is trying to send a message across that will resonate with people, and sometimes that involves showing people in their most vulnerable moments. And I had to come to terms with myself to understand the importance of those moments, of showing those moments, but showing them in a way that will only make everybody stronger and not weaker, if that makes sense. And in this case, obviously, I had access. The family was there at all times. What I do when I'm covering this kind of situations, I explain to people how I work, which is I am a fly on the wall. I will be photographing. You don't have to do anything for me. Just, live your life as you would, as if I wasn't there. And if there is anything that you're not comfortable with me photographing, please just say so, and then I will not photograph. And for me, then, people know that I will be photographing, and I don't have to keep asking permission, because I know that if I am crossing the line, or if it's something that they're not comfortable with, they will just speak up and say so. So this is so there were happy moments and sad moments. This is Rainey coming back from school. She's a very spirited child. She runs, she talks, she's a joy to be around. And this is like she's just saying hello to her neighbor. And this is one of the moments when it's the end of the day. Lisa is really tired. Rainey is really tired. What they're doing there is they're on a phone call with a therapist, and she's exhausted. She works. It's a lot for her to take care of Rainey, and she does an exceptional work doing that. But it's exhausting, and that is for me when what it is important to show, so people can understand the stakes. And this is a trampoline that's in front of their home, and Rainey would not stop for 1 minute. She would be jumping in the bed. She would be out playing in the yard, and then she decided to show me how she would jump. And for me, it was a really good moment. And for me, this image it speaks a lot about her situation, being suspended in midair, in this kind of limbo, her health situation. And at the same time, it speaks to who she is as a child and the joys of, of being alive. And so after we went to the cemetery, we went there by ourselves, me and the writer. They decided to go there and tend to the grave of her stepfather. So we accompany them there. So that's in that same cemetery. And this is the last body of work that's in the book. That's Trump. This is the RNC. This is the last day. So this was, one of those moments. I mean, I did not know that this was going to happen. I think I could only get it because I was really at the end of the room there. And this is Kamala, a campaign event here in Arizona. This is one of the rallies. Also, this was in Tucson. Trump doing the dance. And yeah, some of the attendees. And I think that's the last one. So yeah, I think the most important thing, I think the message that I want to share here for you all is that I've always been very vocal about photographing our own stories, our own plays. And I think that photographing migration is the story of my life. It's the story of where I was based for 13 years. Now I moved when living here in Phoenix. Is the same story, just on the other side, and it's also my backyard. I feel that when you photograph the stories that are close to you, they really have an extra meaning, and not to mention logistics and the ability for you to keep going back and really working on these themes in a much deeper way. So although I do photograph some international stories, and it's amazing and I love it, but for me, what was always important, and it was always crucial to my career, was the stories that were close to me, either here or in Mexico, the case that I photographed in Tepito, or my Family Matters project that was the result of the story of the students disappeared in Ayotzinapa. I feel that the strongest stories that I worked on were always the stories that were next to me. So yeah, thank you again for having me here. Yeah, I got like 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you for sharing this insight into your work, Adriana. It's always a big pleasure. Yes. I think let's head to Brooklyn. Let me just. Okay. So. To see our project, Brooklyn, and then I'll just encourage everyone in the audience to just prepare questions, because at the end we're gonna have a short Q&A if there will be questions, and if not, I'll ask the questions. So Brooklyn, now it's the time for you to present.
Thank you. Thanks, Nika. Thanks, Adriana. Thanks, Danny. Grateful to be here talking about my work today. I'll try and talk for as long as everyone did before me, but we'll see. So I'm going to be sharing my work. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we see now your photo mechanic. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So as Danny said, I was involved at the Daily Iowan a long time ago in 2012, 2015 to 2017. I was a student photographer there. I was an assistant photo editor for a little bit. And then I worked for Danny for a couple years after that as his assistant. And that's when I really started to develop my voice and what I wanted to photograph. And like Danny and Adriana have said, it's important to them to photograph things that are close to them. That's always something that I have valued as well. And all the work that I make, I am connected to in some way personally. So when I was in the VII mentorship program, I had to develop a body of work, or I didn't have to, but that was my goal for the program. Was to start a new body of work dealing with some type of political issue in the US. As a queer and non-binary person myself, queer rights and trans rights have always been really important to me. And in 2023, as anti-trans legislation was really ramping up in the US, I then decided that I wanted my project to focus on that. And this project that you see here is from Missouri. And I chose that state specifically at the time because in the whole Midwest region where I was living at the time and lived my whole life until very recently, that was a state that was introducing the most anti-trans legislation in the Midwest. And so I knew that I wanted to start working there and talk to trans people in the area that were being impacted. So I'm just going to go through my photos pretty quickly, and then I'll highlight the ones that are in the book.
Sorry, Brooklyn, sorry to disturb. Could you just maybe press the full screen just so we don't see like that part with the, I don't know how it's called. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just go through quickly and then highlight the pictures that are in the book and then the picture that is in the Photoville exhibition. So this is someone that I photographed a lot. His name is Doug. He is a trans guy from Kansas. I've been photographing him now for 2 years as he goes through his journey accessing, trying to access trans healthcare. This is Doug and his roommate before a night out. This is the Missouri State Capitol during the summer when the Naths are out. This is another person I photographed for the project, Ryan, and his wife, Chandler. Ryan is also trans and living in rural Missouri, where there are not a lot of other trans people around. And this is Avery, who was living in Kansas when we met. They now have moved to Colorado for fear of their own safety, being a trans person in the Midwest, and specifically living so close to Missouri where anti-trans laws are more rampant. So the story behind this picture is we were just hanging out one day, walking around Lawrence, Kansas, which is where the University of Kansas is, college. And we were just walking around and we were in this park and the light just was shining perfectly on this old tree stump. So we collaborated on this portrait and this is the position that Avery wanted to be in. And we made that picture. This is Gwendolyn, who is a trans woman also living in rural Missouri. At the time of this picture, she was trying to schedule feminization surgery and now is not sure if she'll ever be able to do that in the state of Missouri. This is Doug at home. This is a picture that's in the book. One of Doug's friends, Kai, was wearing a belt that didn't quite fit, and so they needed to make another hole in the belt. And I've gotten some mixed reviews on this picture. I think some people could see it as being violent just because this person's holding a knife, but for me, it was just like a really simple moment that kind of highlights some aspects of being like non-binary and trans, and kind of just making your style work with whatever you have and adjusting things as necessary, like as your gender changes and as the things that you wear and feel comfortable in change. This is some friends at a Halloween party in Kansas City, all friends of Doug's. I've spent a lot of time with him, gotten to know him really well and his friends. This is Doug before getting top surgery, and this is his roommate and one of his best friends, Zach, comforting him before he goes into surgery. And Doug was able to access this trans care in Kansas City, Kansas, and not Kansas City, Missouri, because even though the states share a city, the politics in both states are very, very different, even though they're so close together. And trans healthcare in Kansas is still legal, where it is not legal in Missouri. And then I'll get more into the specifics about that once we go through the images. This is Doug after surgery, coming out of anesthesia. This was just kind of a really interesting moment. I was just walking around the property of Ryan's place, the picture that we saw before of him and his wife dancing, and just came across this exercise machine with the Gender Euphoria book, which is a really popular book in queer and trans culture. And that moment just felt interesting to me because I was just like in the middle of nowhere, but I'm also with like people in my own community and kind of just having this connection over this book. Now this picture is from St. Louis. Chelsea here on the right is a young person, a young trans person in Missouri who was able to access her healthcare right before the state's ban went into effect in August of 2023. And that ban not only prohibits trans minors from accessing gender affirming care, but also prohibits Medicaid from covering that care for adults. So not only are trans restrictions coming for young people, but they're also coming for trans adults as well. So this is Chelsea hanging out with her family and her neighbors on St. Patrick's Day. This is an abandoned beauty school near Doug's home. And this is the last picture I'll show. This is from when I traveled to DC last December when the Supreme Court was hearing a case called Skermetti versus the United States. And that case was about trans youth in Tennessee trying to access healthcare. And actually, I just checked up on that right before we met. And the Supreme Court just released their decision that the bans in Tennessee will still be upheld. So this will likely have really devastating ramifications for trans youth and trans adults all over the country. And that decision was just made like probably a couple hours ago. So while I talk more about the project, I'll just leave it on this picture of Avery. So now where I'm at with the project is it's still very much ongoing, and I just plan to make it back to Missouri as soon as I can and keep photographing trans people in that community. And specifically, I will be focusing on trans adults who qualify for Medicaid and now cannot use Medicaid to cover any of their trans health care. So when that happens, people either have to pay out of pocket, which is extremely expensive, and a lot of people just don't have access to that, or they will have to go without trans health care, which has devastating health and physical ramifications for trans people. And what I really want people to get from this project is kind of just a deeper understanding of the country that we live in. And I've learned so much more about how bills are passed, how laws are made through this project. And I've just gotten the understanding that America, the people who run our country, really value control over freedom. And in this project, we see that they value the control of other people's bodies and people being allowed to make their own healthcare decisions that are backed by science. So now with this Supreme Court decision that just came out, as devastating as it is, will require me to probably expand the project and not just focus on Missouri, but now focus on other states in the US. And yeah, I think being part of this book project and being part of Photoville has been a really amazing experience for me, and try and get my work out there in the world and hopefully get more support and funding as I continue the project.
I just removed your screen sharing, so I hope that's fine, Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. I'll bring now Danny back and Adriana. All right. Well, welcome back. Thank you, Brooklyn, for sharing this. I just, really wanted to ask you, where do you find kind of how do you find the way to show your work? Because it's such a relevant story and it's really very important. And how do you kind of get it out in the world?
Right now, because it's still very much in the developmental stage, it hasn't yet been published. I'm hoping that some aspect of the project will be published very soon, and then from there, that will hopefully just like launch the project into the public eye and allow me to continue developing it as these laws keep getting drafted and keep getting passed across the country.
Yeah. So Danny, would you still have anything to share about the project in terms of, as I mentioned, I always wanted to know more about cooperation also with the university, with their support in a way. How did they respond to this project, to this initiative?
Yeah, can everyone hear me? I make sure I'm not muted.
Yes.
Can't hear anything but moving lips. The project was the workshop portion. There were 8 students in the attending the workshop, 4 photo editors who worked directly with Adriana and Brooklyn. They work no different than any other photo editor would. Brooklyn is taking their project to multiple photo editors. They're having those conversations with those photo editors, and it's the exact same thing I wanted students to experience. I think, I'll be honest. I think as an industry on the educational side, we need to put more emphasis. Photographers are, yes, instruction for photographers is important. Of course it is. I'm not saying it is not. But I really think as an industry on the educational side, what we need to most concentrate on is educating photo editors, curators, designers, and that, because that curation side of visual storytelling is so vital, so important in what we all want to do, which is have impact. I personally think that photographers, they come from, personal life experience. My first photography professor, told me, Peter Feldstein, author of, if anyone wants, a book. Unfortunately, Peter passed away shortly after, a few years after publishing the Oxford Project, but he photographed everyone in his small town of Oxford, Iowa, and then 30 years later, photographed them again. And it's a beautiful body of work. But Peter, I remember in my intermediate photography class at the School of Art at the University of Iowa, he said that, great photography comes from a place of trauma, a place of suffering. And while I hope it isn't just that, I do believe that a lot of photographers are, as both Adriana and Brooklyn, I'm serving as the director on, director on the workshop portion and co-producer of the project. So I'm not going to get into myself, but I can tell you that each of the photographers that are in this, it is very much who they are, the stories that they're covering, immediate impact, their own homes, their own neighborhoods, and their own lives, and that's what's beautiful about always hearing to photographers who are so absolutely committed to the topics that they cover. It's just so important. So I, in developing this project, kind of the curriculum side, the idea of what it is, my main concern was the work that we all collectively need to do in training editors, curation. There are over 3 billion photographs uploaded to the internet every day. I mean, come on. There's like, what fraction of that is worthwhile for humanity? Well, even if it's the tiniest of fraction, that's a lot of work every single day, right? There's still a lot of important work done every day. The digital silver mine, which is, an individual, I'm sure it's grown beyond just the one individual, but who has collected old negatives in China and then curated that and put that work out. I just, that's on Instagram. That's some of my absolute favorite work, because it was disregarded. It was thrown in the garbage. So how many of these stories are being missed? How many photographers are working in underrepresented communities and regions? And, that's what I'm concerned about. So I want to make sure, while yes, I want, we all need to encourage each other as photographers, but I'll be honest, from the education side, the emphasis needs to be elsewhere. And it's very difficult while it's hard to get assignments nowadays. Who it's really the hardest for? Photo editors. Go live the life of a photo editor in newsrooms where they have cut the number of photo editors. The women and men who do that job, the individuals who do that job, I have the greatest respect for, because they are doing it so understaffed. And I understand that the publications are working to survive. I'm not blaming anyone in this. I'm just saying that they're having, 50 years ago, Life magazine photographer or National Geographic magazine photographer having months with a photographer on a project, and they're only editing so many. That's, that is so difficult now. I mean, that's really your editors taking their personal time and giving you their personal time. When you get, so photographers, when an editor is working that closely with you, do understand that they have their normal 40 to 60 to whatever, how many hours. So that was the goal of this. Is, there was also a publicist, but the goal really was to start looking at and recognizing. I also feel that, photographers, also have a responsibility, and not just thinking that, oh, I have to, have the W. Gene Smith battle with my publishers and editors. No, it's collaboration. It's collaboration. And I want to create curriculum that had collaboration, a collaborative back and forth with all the photographers. And I really got to thank the photographers, because they weren't getting paid to speak to these editors, these student photo editors. They were and designers, and then of course our text editor Jen Wagner. But it was important to the entire process, and they're all just incredible pros, and it went really well. So thank you for asking. I hope it went well for everyone involved, but looking at it as a publication, then I think indicates I'm very happy with taking 20 voices and bringing them all together, is into one publication. So 20 distinctive visual styles, stories that are connected, but, can feel distant if not sequenced properly, meaning distant from the other stories within the book. That was all the challenge. And I really love that part of the challenge as an editor. But I do think it's really important for photographers to always be exercising, that editing muscle. It's so important, sequencing and studying other narratives, and I hope a project like this, getting involved, so for the community members listening, getting involved will allow you to be exercising that editing, sequencing muscle, and interacting and figuring out how to interact with editors who have limited time. Adriana's editors at the New York Times, Brooklyn editors, I know they are speaking to about this project, and that's a beautiful thing as they learn how to do that process. I can tell people how I do it, but everyone, Brooklyn needs to go through it to learn how to get large scale projects into legacy media, and they are learning that as this project progresses. So I love seeing all that, and hope that was what everyone got out of this. So community photographers, and I've gotten really good feedback from community photographers, as well as the contributing even. So that's enough for me. That's too much talking.
Well, maybe then let's go to the exhibition part of it. You said we need more curators. I think we need to educate people in this field, because, for example, also in certain regions or cultures, editors, curators are much more present. We know that in the majority world that we educate, there's much less of this people that we can have access to. Because, for example, where I come from, there's no kind of tradition of photo editor, so it's very rare that a magazine has one. And I'm sure that's in many, many other countries where our community members are from. But yeah, going to exhibitions, how was the experience at PhotoWheel? I'm not sure if all three of you were there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So how did the public respond? Was there any surprises from the audience? How was the interaction there? How important it is also to show in exhibitions in this kind of public spaces that they can reach a much larger audience.
I can talk a little bit about that if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really well. So it was 2 weekends ago now, I think. The first day was pretty much completely rained out. We were running around trying to cover up books and prints and all that. So that day was a little bit of a wash. We did still have some folks come out and walk around the exhibition and ask questions and stuff like that, but it was pretty limited just because of the weather. And then that Sunday was a lot more successful. We had, I want to say we had about 15 or 20 people around the exhibition, just kind of casually talking to photographers and getting the book signed and stuff like that. And then we had, at Photoville, they do these walking tours So we had an even larger group come by with the walking tour, and we were all able to speak about the project, and our roles in the project and the individual stories that we were working on. And that was a really cool experience. Just being outside with everyone and being in a more accessible space. I think it can be kind of overwhelming for people to just go and see work in museums and galleries and things like that if they're not like comfortable in those spaces, and sometimes they cost money, so that can limit a lot of people. So it was just cool to be able to share work like in a free and open space.
I'll add in real quick that the university funded for 3 of the students who participated in the workshop to be there. So they were interacting, hosting, if you will, but interacting with the general public, and talking about different, because unfortunately we couldn't represent every one of the stories in the exhibition print. But most of them are there. And, then they were able to talk about those stories and themes and in relation to the political process. And I think some educators had questions on the workshop format and things like that, that Ron and I answered, and maybe some students as well. But that was another part of the, that educational side that I felt was important for this development of curators, individuals who are promoting other people's work. That's the, while I do have work in this, I covered the campaign, somewhat closely. So I have campaign work, and then I have, a story that's very relevant to the theme, but I'm working as the photo editor and as the editor, the curator of the book. And your job as curator, and it's sometimes difficult to get through to people, especially early career or young individuals. The idea, because you're just trying to find your own voice in photography. But I think it's really important to promote other work. And you just think of music, or I guess I always think of musicians and how musicians promote each other by playing each other's songs. And in that art form, there's just been, it's such a better community in that regard. I do think that the fact that, I don't know if it's the economics but I don't sometimes feel enough of that within the photography community. And that could be the just the lack of the number of individuals who are in this role of curation, photo editing, whatever you want to call it. I was very fortunate. Marianne Galland, very early in my career, helped me a lot, helped me develop as a freelance photographer, and having that individual was there supporting me, and was so absolutely fundamental in me doing anything in photography. So I'm hoping that will be a part of this as well. And then and sometimes I fortunately have lived outside of the US and worked outside of, and know the absolute, well, as you're saying, Nika, some places they're just, photo editors don't exist, and at publications, and I hope that's something that something like this project encourages. And moving forward, we continue and continue in the majority world.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. We also have other similar initiatives, like we have Square Mile, that's kind of not like this, but it's also very much supporting alumni we have in the majority world with their kind of local stories. So I think, yeah, all of this initiatives done with our community, it's super valuable and really is very important also to go forward to create a legacy. So maybe now a question for you, Adriana, in terms of, yeah, legacy about, let's say, this kind of project. What do you think is gonna stay with this project for future generations? How relevant it is and how important it is to support this kind of projects?
Well, that's a big question you had for me.
Can be for all three, but it's just, yeah.
Okay, how many parts were there? Well, look, I feel like it's invaluable. This kind of project, first of all, it puts together a number of perspectives, of parts of the same big story together in a way that it's very difficult for you to individually go piecing, the work for one photographer, and then that one is over here, that one is over there, and that one is over there. And then I feel like it's just absolutely fantastic that we have in one book, all this that converge all these stories and all these point of views and all this visual narratives, and I feel this is incredible, and to see the work. I feel like as a photographer, like sometimes we do work for ourselves, like when I do my personal projects, I never start a personal project thinking, oh, this is going to be a book, oh, this is going to be a documentary, oh, this is going to be an exhibit. I start a story because I don't know what's going to become. And then it kind of like takes a life of its own. And then organically, things start happening, and it does become a book. Sometimes it does become an exhibition. Sometimes it becomes a documentary. And I never know how these things are going to work out in the end, but it's always, unbelievably rewarding to see when it takes this second, third, and fourth life and then reaches people that you did not have in mind when you start the project. And that only takes a community together. That takes other people coming in and looking at it. And then, so, how does that happen? It's a little bit of magic. It's a little bit of work. It's a lot of work. Sorry. It's a little bit of magic. It's a lot of work. It's, serendipity, things that, you start putting the work out there, you put in a photo, someone see, and then it sparks something in someone. Oh, let's do a project. Let's do, an interview. Let's do something. And I feel that this is how, we bring ourselves together and we become, stronger, and then that's how, I think the power of photography is, for me. I am like the biggest, most passionate advocate for, photojournalism and still photography. Nothing against multimedia, but my thing is still photography, and I really believe in the power and the impact it has in people's lives, and yeah, I feel this is fantastic. It's just yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you mentioned now multimedia, and I also am with you very much on the like power of like photography as a medium. But maybe now a question for Danny: is there a plan like for this kind of to evolve further beyond the book, beyond the exhibitions? What are kind of the plans for US? You mentioned before USA 4.0. So where are you heading with this project, maybe?
Well, for those who will be at ARL, we're part of the Off ARL festival. There'll be a presentation on Friday, a multimedia presentation. Ed and Julie are producing that presentation, so it'll take the work from the book, and they will do their magic at Talking Eyes Media, and I'm really excited about that. We're in conversation about another exhibit of the work that would open in the fall. So yeah, we're working at making sure that the book and the work continues to move through society and societies, being that it is going to be outside of the U.S. now too. We'll continue to do that and it's not in the background. That's very much the foreground. But we also are at a moment in the United States that is critical for all of us to be out working. And Ron sent me a couple photos, and we're running so long, I'm not going to bring up our photographs. But he was recently in LA covering the protests and riots in LA. I think probably everyone on the call covered the No Kings protests in some way. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Adriana, were you in the country? I can't remember.
I had just gone back from Mexico.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But I'm sure Brooklyn. Did you?
No, I had to work.
Okay. But there were quite a few of us, Doug Barrett, who's, a good friend, former mentee from the VI, one of the VI community programs, the 1-to-1. He was my mentee. He and I were, back and forth because we had the horrific tragedy just north of us. I was photographing in Des Moines, so just north on I-35. Of course, you're heading to Minnesota and Minneapolis, and we had just a horrific tragedy there, and the political violence assassination is exactly what this was. Political assassination was weighing heavily on everyone in the crowd. It's literally just not even 3-hour drive up straight north on I-35. So Doug and I were both communicating about that. Being in the Midwest, we were both concerned, making sure each other were safe, watching our backs. Of course, all of our colleagues in LA were dealing with a lot more completely peaceful protests in both Kansas and Iowa. I have to say that I was very surprised at the turnout. The Des Moines Register estimated that it was 7,000 people. Iowa has been in the news because of our junior senator, Joni Ernst, in responding to a question about cuts in Medicaid. For those outside the U.S., Medicaid is our public medical coverage for low income. And her response to a comment about the potential cuts by the Trump administration was, all of us are going to die. I saw that the crowd, I saw a lot of signs regarding Medicaid, but I also saw a demographic, an age population that made me think that there is something very unique going on. So that's where we all need to move forward. Our job is to stay aware. Joyously, drunkenly, epically aware. I can't remember the whole Henry Miller quote.
Oh yeah.
I used to be able to quote it because it was a magnet that my wife and I had on our. But yes, to be aware at all that is happening around us, and the country needs us. And this isn't from any political perspective. This is from a journalistic, down the middle. We need to be out ground truthing. If someone, a senator, a U.S. senator, says that in response to a question about what is going to happen to people, low income, no income individuals who lose their health care coverage because of cutbacks to Medicaid, when that question is asked and the response is we're all going to die, I think I have a mission ahead of me. And all of us in the US, that's what I hope. And again, it's not coming from a political perspective. That's coming from knowing your community and getting out and doing the job. And Adriana is so right. Like, what we do has such personal touch, personal connection, meaning still photography. It's allowed to people, it allows people to see all they have in common, all that we have in common worldwide. Of course, I'm speaking about a project in the United States and a specific moment in the United States. And Brooklyn and Adriana's work helps me remember all I have in common. That migration story, that's the story of rural Iowa. Rural Iowa, the only communities where you see viable downtowns, economic growth are communities where there has been a significant increase in Latino population, period. End of story. It's stats.
Yeah, yeah, just a little compliment that how, you know, the migrants have this power of changing not just the place that they left, but the place that they arrived. So they're changing, you know, both places at the same time. And this is so, that's the story of our lives, of the place that we live, of the planet Earth, of all the countries. I mean, nothing is static. Everybody's moving, right? Why is it so hard for people to understand that?
Yeah. But it's our job to, you know, and you know, I moving forward on your question, Nika, you know, we'll all be out working to make another publication. Mm-hmm. So I am a huge fan of the Provoke movement in Japan. The Provoke series of magazines, 3 magazines that were published that, you know, looked at, you know, the impact of American imperialism on Japan, late 60s, early 70s. And, you know, also was thinking very deeply about representation and the use of photography, how it was being used. And, you know, just an amazing, you know, moment in one of the most important in Japanese photography history, but incredibly important moment, I think, in all of the history of photography. Daido Moriyama, Takumi Nakahira, and et cetera, et cetera. These are individuals that I'm have long connected to their work and their writings, but I'm even thinking more strongly about today. And that's what we got to do. We got to cover this moment. USA 4.0 is now happening. What is this democracy going to look like, you know, post this administration? What are people's lives? How are they going to be impacted during this administration? Our job is to get out and cover that. Again, we want to do things that amplify, but, you know, we also need to be out there documenting USA 4.0.
Thank you, Danny. I think let's conclude with that. Let's invite everyone that are in the audience to really reach out. If you have work, obviously we'll connect you to Danny. I'll just put the email from me and Gianna here, just so you know. But I think most of you are now already very well connected to us, so I think there's no need. Because we are, it's a very strong community in 2 years and a little bit. So I think we know so many photographers, and it's great to really have an insight into such a lively community that really helps each other, learns from each other, is very humble. And I love to see also when community members share their work. As you said, to support each other. So I think it's a very important moment in time and also in our community. So I want to thank you all for this almost 2 hours of very nice discussion. It was really lovely seeing first the whole magazine. So Danny, thank you for presenting that. And then getting more insight into your projects, Adriana, in Brooklyn. Really, really relevant stories, and happy you shared them with us. I did many times encourage our audience, who's very quiet today, to also ask some questions, but I think if there's no questions, I'll just also share now the link, because Danny mentioned that USA 3.0 is heading to Adel. I'm sharing the link to all of the events we're going to have in Adel as the foundation. For VII Community, you know that we have a lot of private events as well. So there will be portfolio reviews. There will be there's a workshop. We have a special dinner as well. So there is a lot of community-only kind of activity. So in case you missed that in the newsletter, you can also reach me on this email that I shared with you if you are coming to ARL. But as Danny said, US 3.0 will be presented at Festival Off, which is a different location to the VII Foundation. You can see it obviously on the website. And I think presentation is around 11 in the morning, something like that. So yeah, we'll be really happy if you can join us. And if you have obviously more questions about the project, really feel free to reach out and we'll pass you more information. But yeah, thank you to all of the guests. It was really nice to connect with all of you, and really appreciate it. If there's any final kind of thoughts from your side, we'll be happy to hear, or maybe hear about where you're heading next, so we know where to we can catch you.
Brooklyn?
Where you can catch me, either in New York or Missouri.
Well, I'm here in Arizona. You can catch me anytime here. You know, on Instagram. I'm always there.
And I live in Iowa, but I will be out in the communities looking at the impact of not just healthcare, but also tariffs, cutting of USAID, and the impact on wheat farmers. Like all these stories that are mandatory to being told. And of course other news that comes up, but it's just a really important time for all of us to work in the way we work, to promote each other's work. Not that isn't, it has nothing to do with the promotion of any individual. Like self-promotion, it's promoting the stories, it's promoting these issues, getting work in front of the public, because again, I just feel like we have this unique place where we can connect people instead of the screaming talking heads on cable television that are there to divide us. I mean, it's not all that, of course. There's some incredible journalism done there as well. But I do want to say that I believe still photography has a unique place in bridging gaps and connecting people. So, I will be all in, and and hopefully we'll have another publication, USA 4.0, that we can present.
Perfect. Let's look forward to that. So thank you to also everyone in the audience for joining us today. I think we'll conclude with this. I just want to alert you that we have no programming online in July and August, and we will also be closed for 3 weeks between July and August. So I'll send you more details in our Discord platform. But yeah, I think for this kind of for June, this was our last discussion in the community, and then we'll see all of you at the community in September. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Nika.